Have you ever been really, really angry? I'm sure you have. We've all been really, really angry. And then we lash out and we shut down and we do all kinds of things to retaliate or to make ourselves be heard or seen or understood. And yet, does anger work? I mean, what do you do with your anger? It's a real feeling. It's an important emotion. It informs us, but yet, like, what do you do with your anger? And is it really effective? So today I'm going to have Jill Wolfe, who is an Imago therapist and faculty member, come on the show and talk to us about anger and what do we do with it? And is it really effective? So come find out the journey of anger and where to go from here. Welcome back to the Relationship Blueprint, where you unlock your power of connection. And today's guest is going to help us explore the concept of anger, this feeling that everyone has, this feeling that can just be overwhelming to the nervous system. It has caused many big disagreements, some of which people never recover from. People say things they don't mean. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And yet, it's this big feeling, and the feeling is there to inform us that something is not right. So how does anger work for us? And does it work for us? And when we feel it, what do we do? So I'm excited today to have Jill Wolfe with me. She's an Imago faculty member. She's an Imago therapist, and she's a good friend. And with Jill, we're going to explore anger and what to do when we are angry. I can't wait to be with you and hear more about anger and what Jill has to share about anger, especially in relationships. So Jill, I'm really excited to see you today. It's been a while, I guess, since we were in Costa Rica.
That's right.
Yeah, too long.
Too long.
Too long. And then I had time with you in Chicago too, when you picked me up at the airport. I so appreciated
Yeah,
that.
that was fun. It was good to connect.
It was fun. We had some good times. And so your topic today is really important, and it's fascinating to me because for so many reasons, I think when I think about anger, I think about the times where I've hidden my anger, pushed it down, let it out. And I think that we all have this big emotion, and yet sometimes managing it is so tricky. I was even in my closet today. I'm like, I'm going to wear red. I'm going to find something red to symbolize anger. And I couldn't find anything, but I thought, we think of anger and we think, I should say I speak for myself. I used to associate anger with bad, like a bad feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Ooh, that's such a big question. So I want to tell you the source of a lot of where I know what I know.
Okay.
So many years ago, I saw a man named Stephen Stasny on Oprah, and he was talking about anger and emotional self-regulation, as he called it at the time. We might call it anger management.
Uh-huh.
And he was doing these boot camps for people, kind of like a workshop. So I went once as a participant, and I was so blown away by the process that then I went again as an assistant. It's kind of like my process in Imago therapy. I first met Harville Hendrix in 1989 when I went to one of his Getting the Love You Want workshops. I dragged my reluctant husband to the workshop so that Harville could fix him. And of course, soon found out how much work I had to do, which was actually a relief because I didn't even like the person I had become in that marriage.
Isn't
But
that interesting?
yeah.
Like how we change within a marriage.
Oh,
Yeah.
hugely. Yes. Relationships are so unique in that they can evoke sometimes our most primitive, immature selves, and sometimes really can be an opportunity for healing and growth. And that's what I love about Imago. But I'm not going to talk about Imago right now.
Okay.
What I want to say is what I learned from Stephen Stasny. And some of this, is just common sense, but a lot of it I just want to make explicit. Anger for the sender is very different than anger for the receiver. Anger for the sender feels kind of good, at least initially. Anger for the receiver always feels bad, always feels unsafe. If you were to ask somebody to kind of fill in this sentence, in my family growing up, anger was
Scary.
scary. Yes. Certainly in my family growing up, anger was dangerous.
Ah.
Very dangerous. Yeah. Yeah. My parents had a very volatile, hostile, verbally abusive relationship. So, and I saw it both ways. There was no obvious victim or heroine or hero or perpetrator. It was just anger. So, anger is different for the sender than the receiver. For the sender, let me talk about that for a second. Anger has a couple biological purposes. One is to be kind of an anesthetic, to help us not feel something that's intolerable. By the way, anger also helps us not feel something physical. Do you ever notice, like, if you stub your toe on the chair, you have an impulse to yell or swear or,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Ow, or God bless it, or whatever.
Yeah.
The chair doesn't care that you just swore at it. So why do we do that? Because it evokes a cascade of neurochemicals that helps us not feel less pain, helps us feel less pain. That's why on the battlefield, everyone's like, let's go get them. So they have filled with adrenaline and cortisol and all these things that make us not feel pain. Same with football. There's this, looks like anger, right? I remember reading a study where they had, of course, college kids stick their hand in a bucket of ice water, and they timed, what's the baseline? How long could they hold it in there? And okay, dry off. Then put your hand in the bucket of ice water and say some neutral word like sofa. Okay, time that, take it out. Now put your hand in the ice water and swear. And indeed, when the person was swearing, they could tolerate the pain more. They could hold their hands in the bucket of ice water longer.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting?
That is really interesting to me, this biochemical response.
That's right.
And an instinct, right? It's instinctual. You stub your toe, you swear.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm with you.
It's instinctual and not very conscious. So in a minute, I'll talk about how can you be conscious with your anger and not just have it be instinctual. But I want to go back to a little bit about the biological parts of it. So anger acts as an anesthetic and also as an energizer. Do you ever notice when you're not feeling well, you get cranky? It's because it gives us a little boost. Or when we're tired, we get a little ornery because it gives us a little boost of energy. Now, it's not authentic energy, and it's not authentic power. Authentic energy is I had a good night's sleep. I ate well, I worked out, whatever it is. That's authentic energy. Inauthentic energy is if I had a handful of M&Ms. That's going to give me a little boost for a second, but what happens after that sugar goes away? It's the drop, right? And the same thing happens with anger. When we have an expression of anger, all those neurochemicals are going and we feel a little bit good for a second. And then when they recede, we drop. We feel a little depleted. We might feel ashamed. We might feel tired.
Mm.
You know, all of those things that indicate it's not real energy. It's not real power. It's temporary and kind of manufactured by us. So that's one thing. I remember one time my daughter, Jenny, she was probably about 12 years old. She was upset about something and she was stomping down the stairs like that, like big stomps. And I said, "Come on, Jenny, is that really going to help?" And she said, "Actually, it does." So she was expressing the feeling of, I feel better doing
Uh,
this.
uh-huh.
Does that make sense so
It
far?
makes a lot of sense, but you're making me think of all kinds of examples and experiences, but let me see if I've got it so far. So what you're saying is that this feeling that we get of anger, that it actually helps us feel better, especially if we can it gives us energy to do something like the
Yes.
stomping, the swearing, and somehow all of that is like an analgesic that kind of
Mhm.
lowers the pain that we actually feel about whatever the physical pain or the mental pain.
That's right. That's right.
Do I have it?
Yes, and I
Okay.
will say a little bit more about the way that it protects us from
Okay.
the second. But I also want to say, like you've hit on something important in that it it anger is very active, right? It can serve as a catalyst, as a mover. Um, so that's a good thing. That can be a good thing, right? If not for anger, there'd be no social movement for, human rights.
Right.
Would have
Right.
been no Me Too or no, uh, you know, Black Lives Matter movement or any of these that required a certain amount. Like if we just all sat like, oh, this is awful, but didn't feel like an urgency to do something, and that urgency is often the anger. I'll
So
give you another.
but what you're saying too about social movements and a lot of things that anger propels us to action. And I'm
Yes.
even thinking about my first marriage and my divorce, that the sadness for so long was so big that I was immobilized, couldn't
Yes.
make decisions, couldn't do the next thing, like find a job.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but until that anger was allowed to come or came miraculously,
Yes.
I was not functioning,
Yes. Right. You were shut down.
shutting down.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'll give you another example of that. Many years ago, I was sitting with a friend who is not a client, so I didn't have my therapist hat on, but he was going through a rough time, and we were just talking. And he said, "What would you say if I told you I was thinking about killing myself?"
Uh,
Well, I quickly put my therapist hat on, and I said, "Well, how much are you thinking about it?" He said, "Well, I already took the pills." So I start yelling at him. I say, "You go call Poison Control Center and you ask if you can make yourself throw up. And if they say yes, then you make yourself throw up. And then you call 911 and you get an ambulance here." Like I'm barking orders at him. And, he did all the things I was yelling at him to do. And the ambulance came. He was treated at a hospital, and it ended up being important. I think turning point for him emotionally. Um, but a couple weeks after that incident, we were talking about it, and he said, "What surprised me the most was how angry you were." And I said, "It didn't feel like anger to me. I was terrified."
uh-huh.
But if I would have been frozen in my terror, like I was worried he was going to drop dead in front of me.
Yeah.
If I were frozen in that terror, what would have happened?
Right.
Who knows?
The big, yeah. So you're saying that he heard anger. What
Yes,
you felt was terror,
correct.
and your reaction was huge. But you're really wondering, like, and then I think many of us have been there when you are terrified, an inability, like you freeze.
You get
That
free. right?
Yeah, there's a freeze response.
Right. So anger is important and can be productive even in
Yeah.
those cases,
Yes.
right?
And yes, and so even like, we've seen this with couples when a woman or man keeps tolerating a behavior over and over again, and you see their sadness, but you can't see their anger, and waiting for it is like,
Yes.
when will you start to feel this thing you're not letting yourself feel so that you can stand up
Yes.
to
So you
this
have to stand
person?
up.
Right.
Yes. Right. Because again, anger is a catalyst. Anger is active. Anger is a mover. And sometimes it takes the straw that broke the camel's back for us to like, okay, now I have the gumption. But it often comes out inelegantly, shall we say. Right? It
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll talk about what's a relationship appropriate way to express anger. Because it's easy to express anger, at the chair
Yeah.
or in traffic. This the road rage thing, that's real.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So um, that's one of the biological purposes of anger is to move us. Um, the problem is when you're in a relationship, like I said at the beginning, it always feels bad to receive it. And that's also a biological response. If you come upon an angry dog, what's your first impulse?
I think it would be to run.
Run away, right?
Right.
That's We're hardwired for that.
Yeah.
We're hardwired for
Survival.
survival. Yes. Right. So, we don't think thoughts like, you know, it's probably nice dog many days, and maybe it has puppies back at its home and, you know, right? Or
No, we're not thinking that.
we're not thinking that.
No way.
Right? So here's the other thing. Anger distorts our perception. We tend to narrow the focus and magnify the thing we're focused on, which is useful, again, for survival. We want to narrow the focus and just look at the teeth
Yeah.
and hyper focus on that. We don't want to think those other thoughts like, oh, I wonder if it's had a rough life before this moment, or
No.
it probably is hungry or something. We just have to focus on the thing that is connected to our survival.
Right.
So if you ever notice when your partner, may or may not be angry, when someone's angry with you, the impulse is to expand the focus for the receiver. Our impulse is to say, I don't always do this, or it's not that bad, or, look at all the other times where this didn't happen. And of course, because they're angry, their focus is very narrow and magnified.
So
So,
we defend. We try to.
yes, and it's a distortion. That's what I want to say. It's when the angry person calms down, then they have access to other parts of their brain that they didn't have access to when we're angry. Dan Siegel does this wonderful thing about, if this is the amygdala and this is the neocortex around the front part of our brain and this is our brain stem. When we're angry, we literally flip our lid. And what that means is there's not as many neural pathways going from the fear center of our brain to the highest self, the part that is rational, the part that it could observe ourselves. We don't have access to that. Here's the other thing. So we don't have access to problem solving when we're angry. That's why nothing good happens as far as problem solving or moving the relationship forward from a place of anger. It's going to be a distortion.
Hmm.
So, even something like the other day, my son couldn't find his keys and he's huffing and puffing around, and I'm like, Perry, that's not going to help you. It's in fact going to inhibit your problem solving. Well, he don't want to hear that from me anyway, but
Not when
it,
they're angry.
not when they're angry. That's right. That's right. But hopefully he could think about that later and recognize that, okay, when I've misplaced something, I just have to take a deep breath and use all the skills I have to retrace my steps, or where would be a logical place that I might have left them, or whatever it is. But okay, so here's the other part of anger. Remember I said that it was a painkiller.
Yes.
So it kills physical or diminishes physical pain, and it also diminishes emotional pain. So yes, you pointed out appropriately that sometimes you have to get angry to get out of the frozen place,
Mhm.
right? Or the depressed place, or the place of total withdrawal and inhibition. But anger also serves as uh, a process that numbs a more vulnerable feeling.
Mm.
And those more vulnerable feelings that we can't even allow ourselves to feel for a second, it flips so quickly when that feeling comes up. And those feelings they tend to be a little bit different for men and women. Now, I know that's all things apply to all women or all men, but I could safely say in general, for example, most men are taller than most women, right? That's just a biological fact. Okay. So this is how I want you to think of this part. It's an overgeneralization, and yet also may be a useful thing to think about. So, and this is where Stasny says, this goes back to our hunter-gatherer days,
Yeah.
that women's survival depended on our ability to tend and befriend. I'll watch your kids, you watch mine, which berries are poisonous, which are good. And so our survival depended on how lovable we were, so that we wouldn't risk being abandoned, because to be abandoned is to die. And so those neural pathways, that part of our humanity, gets laid down early and often. If you ever noticed, do you ever notice how women greet each other?
I think so. Yeah.
How do we greet each other?
Hi, how are you? Hugs. Maybe a kiss on the cheek if you know them well.
Mhm. Yeah. What else do we do?
Hmm. We look at each other in the eyes.
Mhm. I'll give you the answer that I'm looking for. It's not
Okay.
you hunt for it. We give each other a compliment often. We
Okay.
say, right? Oh, your hair looks so cute. Oh, are those new earrings?
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, I
Yeah.
love that blouse. We'll do that.
Okay.
That is, in essence, our way of reassuring each other. You're lovable. I am too. Let's go eat. Like, guys do not greet each other with, hey, new shirt. You know, they don't say that, because they have a different survival mandate that came exactly also from the hunter-gatherer days. Their survival depended on their capacity as the hunter, as the guard of the periphery of, doing the task that helped support the tribe.
Right.
And if they were inadequate, they were a liability, and they would be shunned out of existence.
Mm.
So men developed an acute sensitivity to the shame of inadequacy.
Say that. Whoa, whoa. This is good.
I know it's
Yeah.
kind of big.
It's big. Okay. So say that one more time.
Yeah. Men, based on their survival mandate,
Yeah.
develop an acute awareness and sensitivity to the shame of inadequacy.
Mm.
Women developed an equally painful or sensitivity to feeling unlovable or at risk of being abandoned. And what is most important to recognize is they're equally tender. And I didn't know that intuitively, because it wasn't me. So years ago, this was with my husband, as I like to say. Sometimes I would call him and I would say, "Hi, how's it going?" And he would say, "Fine," like he was irritated. I'm like, did I call it a bad time? Is everything? No, it's fine. It's fine. What do you need? Okay. So this is before I learned all this. So I thought, well, you know what? After I learned it, no, before I learned it, I thought I'll just pay attention. What does he say when he calls me? Because, we like to get what we
Right.
give what we get. So when he would call me, he would say, "Hi, how's it going?" And I would tell him, I'm like, this kid is doing that. We need a gallon of milk, whatever it is. So after I learned about this, what do you think he was hearing when I would say, "Hi, how's it going?"
Somehow that you're calling and he feels some sort of inadequacy, I guess.
Yes, he was feeling that I was calling to assess or evaluate or judge how he is doing
Mm.
so that I could find out what's wrong so I could fix it because clearly he's not doing enough or he's not doing it right.
But
Otherwise,
you're illustrating something that, of course, we love to talk about in Imago, that you ask a question.
yeah.
And I remember this one specifically asking my husband if he paid the electric bill and
Uh-huh.
him like going off just, and it's not, Kevin, it's not his nature, but he was like, of course I pay the electric bill. You don't trust me to take care of the bills or
Yeah.
I really, really didn't mean that. I just meant if you didn't pay it, I'll pay it. But what people hear.
Yes.
So
And again, we don't intuitively know that because that's not our core vulnerability. Just like my husband's Danny, if I see Danny leaving the house and I wasn't expecting him to, and I'll say, "Where are you going?"
yeah.
And he'll say like, "To the garage. I have to get something out of but my immediate impulse or my immediate fear that gets activated is one that's connected to that early thought of being unlovable or a risk of being abandoned. Now, of course, that got reinforced in my not so pretty childhood. So that those neural pathways really got laid down good.
Yeah.
What I learned was that when I want to be as sensitive to not activating his shame of inadequacy, just like I want him to be sensitive to not activating my fear of abandonment or feeling unlovable.
So I like the word activating that you're using because it feels like often we hear things in our offices like you triggered me,
Yeah.
uh, or you were just triggered by me, or what it
Yeah.
feels sort of attacking or dismissive. But what you're
Mhm.
saying is, let's get really aware. This is the biology,
Mhm.
of fear of abandonment or not being lovable or a feeling of being inadequate. And if we have these facts, they're just
Yeah.
facts. They're
Yeah.
not, um, if we know that about just our general differences in sex, and we did say general,
Yes.
then you're saying, well, then how do I then take responsibility for my impact on other?
That is the whole thing, Coco.
Yeah.
The whole thing. That is how can I be relational even when I'm afraid or angry or hurt or any of those things that is human. How can I still hold in my awareness how my expression of that might be impacting my partner in a way that I probably don't intend?
You might be getting to this later, so tell me, hold
Sure.
on if I'm going too soon, but it's sparking a thought about sometimes myself, I don't really experience a lot of anger a lot, just
Mhm.
fortunately my life is generally very blessed. But when I do, there's some part of me sometimes that wants to stay in it. Like,
Sure.
even though I know my impact, even though I know it's the wrong way to respond, I'm it's a twisted way of thinking about it, but it's like I
Mhm.
need to hold on to it.
Yes. Well, that's because it feels a little good. And here's another thing. So I grew up with a rageful mother, and it was really not fun to say the least. There was physical and emotional abuse. She was in a very unhappy marriage. I'm aware of that now. I was aware of it then too, but I didn't realize then as a kid, you can't know that she's doing her thing because she's hurting.
Right.
You just feel like, oh, I'm bad or wrong or terrible or whatever that is. Um, anyway, I made a vow that when I would become a parent, I would never scream at my kids like that. I think you could see where this is going to go. Because one day I remember I lost it. The kids were little, and I lost it in the screaming, insane kind of way that my mother used to do. And of course, immediately I felt terrible and I apologized and I, tried to make amends. But the other thing I noticed was like how alive I felt. Like every cell in my body was pulsating. And I thought, this is why people rage. Maybe part of why they rage is to feel their full aliveness,
Mm.
So one exercise that we do, I don't know if you guys do this, but we do at the Getting the Love You Want workshop is the positive flooding
Yes.
exercise.
Yes.
And the instructions I give the clients as they're doing that is you could start out nice and easy, but increase the energy until at the end, you're as loud as your loudest fight. So that you could experience your full aliveness in the positive, in the passion way, not just have to turn to anger to feel your full aliveness.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny hearing you talk about your mom because my mom also was as kind as she could be and then raged like it was like a light switch. And I too made the same vow that you did.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, the kids would probably know if I had to scream at some point. But the bigger thing is that what they would report to me is that my silence was way more sinful because they could
Oh,
feel the rage.
they could feel it.
They could
Yes.
feel it. And that was really hard to hear.
Hmm.
And, but I had just never given myself permission to like lose it, and,
Yeah.
and, it's, it's still not a natural thing for me to do because I had labeled that kind of rage as so abusive and I'll never do it kind of blah, blah, blah. But it is interesting how we have a similar experience in our childhood, make the same promise, and then how it manifested later on.
Yeah. Right.
Have you found some balance with that?
Um, yeah, I think I have. I think I have. Well, you know, as you know, I like to play a lot. I like to laugh a lot. I like to help people laugh. And so I find lots of ways to express my full aliveness so that I don't have to turn to anger because I recognize the destructive piece of the anger. And I'm glad you pointed out that anger can be silent also, can be cold as ice.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you thought you were doing a good thing.
Oh, for sure. I thought I was.
Yeah. You were
So,
protecting them from what you had received as a kid.
yeah, and not really protecting anyone. Yes,
Well,
but I thought so.
we do the best we can. I think when we know better, we do better. I know I've done a better job parenting than I received, and I pray my children do a better job with their kids than I've done for them.
And that's why we're talking about this today. I thought it was important here just to differentiate between the silent treatment,
Mhm.
which is purposely to punish someone with silence. And my experience was more of fawning,
Mm.
like I can't speak because I am so afraid of what will come out.
Yeah.
I collapse. I
Yes.
go inward. And in my inwardness was that silence that was unbearable. But I think that there's some nuance to all of this as far as when we talk about silent treatment versus a person's inability to speak because it is like it's stuck right here.
Mhm.
That was true for me anyway.
Yes, and that makes so much sense, Coco, that for you, it was really a stuck place.
Yeah.
And that feels bad to the sender and to the receiver.
Yeah, there wasn't any resolution, and that's
There's
why
no-
this anger thing is such a fascinating topic.
Right. So then the question becomes, how can I express anger in a relational way? How can I do that safely? Um, so some years ago when Ilana, my firstborn, was, I don't know, she was young, less than 8. And I was starting to learn about all this, and I was frustrated with something she was or wasn't doing. And I said, Ilana, I'm so angry right now, and I don't know where to put my feelings. Because, of course, that's how therapists talk at home.
Right.
And she said, why don't you put them in a jar? So I thought, that's brilliant. She's saying I need a container for my anger. So I took like a mason jar and I unscrewed the lid and I started yelling into it. I'm like, I'm so frustrated with Ilana, and she's after your toys, and she won't pick up after herself, and her sister needs something. And I'm just like going. And she stood next to me like this.
Yeah, like
Like
my mouth.
she felt safe. She could hear what I was saying without it being at her. It was in the jar. So then I made a big show of covering it up. And I said, thank you so much, Ilana. I feel much better now. And then she said, Mommy, can I have the angry jar? I said, sure, go ahead. So she takes it. She said, I hate Mommy, and Mommy's the worst mommy in the whole world. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. You know?
Wow, I love that story.
Yeah. I even created this like anger alchemist tool of a can that it's a little too complicated for most people, but the idea is that how can I address the thing that's causing the anger and express it in a way that's relationship positive.
Yeah. And
And
then
that
because it's so destructive. I said in the introduction, which you may or may not have heard, which is you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube when someone says something really hurtful. It is an attack on the soul. And
yeah,
and it's so and if they'd said it in this moment of anger or frustration or whatever, you can understand that intellectually, but still, it's out there and
it is.
it's been said. And so this is why really learning, and you use the word anger management. You
Mm.
also use the word that he used, which is self regulation. But I think both names
Yeah,
really they fit.
they fit. And so when it really requires the work on the self to be able to approach your partner in a way that's hearable. And that's often what I tell couples who express anger. Like, what you're saying is important. I want it to be heard. I want to coach you on how to say it in a hearable way, because otherwise they're just going to have to defend against the energy of it and not be able to take in the wisdom that might be behind it.
Hmm.
So that's why it's important that if you find yourself activated into an angry place, that you stop, you take a timeout. You need to get your biological system back to a regulated place. Um, and so that's why timeouts are effective and important. And they say it takes about 20 minutes to dilute all the cortisol and adrenaline that has gone through your body. And so those timeouts are to be used to take some deep breaths, to maybe shake it off if you feel it physically. You know, it's not a time for gathering evidence of why your position is right.
Well,
They love you.
I was a teacher years ago, right? And one of my favorite things about teaching, of course, was the relationship piece of all of it. So they were 11, 12 tops in the class, and we had a place in the part of the room called Australia.
Mm.
And I just picked Australia because my husband's family was from there and I had books and posters and things. But they could go to Australia when they were losing their minds. They could just pick
Mm.
up and go. But I would go too.
Oh, wow.
So I'd say, I really need you to listen. It's really important. And they're blah, blah, blah. I would just go sit and wait. And then
What a
eventually,
wonderful role model, Gogo.
well, well, I mean, I had already had a lot of training in counseling and psychology, but I was teaching, which is full circle for me right now that I'm teaching again. But the truth really is it felt so empowering to choose Australia versus screaming or doing something else that's ineffective, right?
Yes.
It's
So, yeah,
ineffective.
right. And, I named inadequate and fear of abandonment or feeling unlovable. Those are the two primary feelings we feel that are intolerable. So we respond with anger. But there are other feelings that also tend to evoke um, anger coming in as a management for not feeling that. And you named one of them, and that's powerless.
Mhm.
We hate to feel powerless. That sucks. And so anger, again, gives us this pseudo power. There are other feelings like feeling guilty or rejected or devalued, or there's a whole list of
Shamed, right?
shame. Right. Shame is a big one. Yeah. And shame can make us collapse sometimes, and or avoiding the shame can make us angry. Yeah. So in a conscious relationship, we say all anger is expressed by appointment, that it's okay to have a dialogue and say, I'm really angry about this. So
Mm.
we say it out instead of acting it out,
Yeah.
you
But as
know?
you said, giving ourselves enough time for the amygdala to calm down. You said about 20 minutes, maybe it takes longer, but that time out, and that feels important too, is that what I wish I could have done during those years of when I wasn't screaming, because I knew I was coming back to them. I knew that I
Yes.
wasn't abandoning them, but I didn't say to everyone, I'll be back. I got to have my time out. I just went to the timeout and then they sat waiting,
Mhm.
which was the unhealthy piece. But I think what you're talking about is so important with the appointment to talk about it. I can't do it right now, but I will do it
Yeah.
after dinner or whenever it's going to be.
Right. Right. So that both people are on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like you named another element that's important for the receiver, if I'm angry and, I wanna talk about something, if my partner isn't ready or available, it's important that he be able to say, I'm can't right now, but I will be available at 7 o'clock or whatever." And then at 7, it's his responsibility to initiate,
Yeah.
uh, the dialogue. But it'll be coming from a much better place for both of us.
Yeah. Because we want
Emotional.
successful outcomes.
That's right.
We do. I mean, I think that as much as I was saying, sometimes enjoying being in the pity party or the anger is
Yeah,
tempting, and I don't think it's an unusual experience. But I think ultimately, when we really think about a bigger picture, we're all really trying to connect, and the fact that we have been disconnected is what causes the pain.
that is painful. It goes against our survival mandate, right? We are social critters,
Yeah.
and we thrive or don't thrive based on our connections.
Right. Right. So we have this biological view
Mhm.
of anger, and we know what you've shared today is that is just something that is we're wired that way. Like
Mm. Yeah,
this is our wiring, this is our survival, and that
it's
anger is informative.
can be.
That anger is not bad, it's informative. I really don't like the way I was treated. I think that was unfair.
Mhm.
And then an opportunity then to I'm just going to pause 1 second.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that I've kind of got a good summary of this. So these biological parts of us that we're just hardwired this way, and we can generalize about a female wiring around abandonment or loss of love, not feeling loved. And then the male piece of that as really like the hunter gatherer part of him is always worried about being feeling
Shame of inadequacy.
shame of inadequacy, right? That I'm not good enough, that you're looking for what's wrong with me,
Yeah.
this other kind of biological response. And so in knowing that, we can learn to be more sensitive to
Yeah.
how we speak to our partners. And in that, we can probably avoid a lot of arguments.
Oh my gosh, when you can have compassion for each other, it's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were allergic to peanuts. Now I know, so I won't serve people." Like, "Oh, you have this shame of inadequacy. Let me be mindful of that." "Oh, or you wanna be reassured that you're lovable. Okay, let me take note of that, even though I don't think it's an issue, but for you it is." You know?
And again, you're highlighting something else. I don't think it's an issue, but it has this impact on you. And when I had a dialogue with Kevin about that electric bill, because in that moment, it was so confusing to me, because I wasn't being critical. However, in the dialogue, when I heard the sensitivity around his mom,
Yeah.
he would be mowing the backyard and she would come yell at him and say, "Have you mowed the back?" You know, there was always something he needed to do better.
Yeah.
And so that was really the part that changed for me to be different. And I think that's where that compassion you're talking about comes into it, that if
Mhm.
I have this information about my partner,
Mhm.
whatever that information is, then I have a choice.
Yes.
It's really the power is within me to say, wow, I want to make sure that when I ask this question, he hears it in a way that is not criticism. I still need to ask the question,
Yeah, yeah,
but I can do it in a way that is going to be sensitive to that.
exactly.
And you also were talking about the amygdala, and I love this
Flip
flipping
your
the lid from Dan Siegel, and that takes time to recover from, and that we have to give ourselves that 20 minutes and remind them that we're coming back and ask for that opportunity to dialogue about our anger.
right, right. Going back to the male-female differences, this was like in the days before GPS, remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
If a couple was not finding their way, the woman would often say, "Let's pull over and ask somebody." And the man would often say, "I don't need to, I'll figure it out. And the women, we just want to get where we're going. And by the way, we get points for being the damsel in distress. And men can't tolerate that the shame. Same thing when if a man is fired from a job and a woman is fired from a job. A woman who's fired from a job, she's reading the want ads on the bus ride home. You know, a man who's fired from a job goes into a tailspin of, this was first my identity, which is a whole nother thing, but this means that I'm inadequate. And so he has to overcome that giant hurdle. And yeah, so that's again, once you understand this, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it
Yeah.
with every relationship.
I love that.
And anger comes as a way to not feel so bad. But unfortunately, again, like we've identified, it is very different for the sender than from the receiver. It feels very different.
Well, Jill, is there anything that we haven't said about anger that you want to add for our listeners?
Um, well, I hope I haven't made you angry.
Not at all. Not at all. I've really,
What if I did? What if
oh,
I did? I hope there's room for you to say, because we care about each other and we care about our relationship. And by the way, that's a question I often pose to couples, to ask what's best for the relationship?
Mm.
What's best for the relationship? Because sometimes what's best for the relationship is to speak up in a way that might have some energy about it. And sometimes what's best for the relationship is to self-soothe and get some clarity about what is this activating for me. Because when I can understand, oh, this is what I was feeling just in that microsecond before I started feeling anger. Like then I could speak to that, which is often, our partners generally want to be of help, you
Yeah.
know, want to connect with us. But if we come at them like that angry dog, it's going to be very hard. But if we come at them saying, you know, I'm aware that this happened and here's how you could help me. Here's
Yeah.
what would mean a lot to me.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think what you're saying is so important about the delivery, even in the dialogue, is I'm having a problem
yeah,
and I would love your help with it. I'm
great.
having a huge reaction to X
Yes.
and I don't know what to do with it. And I need to explore this with you. Like versus you said this, the whole you, and, someone might say to me, and they have, why can't I just be direct? Like, he did do it. He did say it. Well, you can, but you and I are really posing the question today, is what you're doing effective? And if it's working for you, I mean, I've known couples, not actually in my practice, but that yell at each other all the time, and then it's past the meatballs. It's just how they talk to one another. I
Yeah.
mean, it is cultural typically, but it is unnerving for me to be in a room with couples that do that. But it is how they relate to one another. It
Well, and
is
it
what
is
they
that
do.
passion piece, right?
Yes.
It is like they feel their full aliveness and their anger. Often, if we are very, reluctant to be angry or conflict avoidant or, freeze all the time, there's, we're not going to feel our full aliveness and there's not going to be the energy to shift things. It's just going to be in that stuck, frozen place.
And this could be a whole nother podcast
Yeah.
politically, but I'm thinking
Oh,
about anger in our culture,
yeah.
how men, if they're speaking on the floor in Congress and they are adamant and they are loud and they are forceful and they may even do some attacking, I think we think of that as strength. And
It
when women
is.
do
And
the same thing, we are bitches, we are emotional,
yeah,
we are out of
distortion.
control.
Yeah.
And so I think that culturally we have these biological impulses and we know where they came from because of you today. But I think we also have this cultural impact around anger
That's important.
that, for me, often when I'm really angered, tears come. And I've seen that a lot with couples. And then the man sometimes says that that's weaponizing
Because it
anger.
makes him feel inadequate as a partner. So
Right.
he has to push that away.
He cannot feel that inadequacy. And so he has to blame her for crying.
That's right. That's
And
right.
her tears are her own anger and frustration, but
That's right.
another different way of expression.
Yeah.
So
So
we have this cultural piece and we have this biological piece, but we also have the solutions that you're suggesting today. Because once again, we ask, is my behavior effective? If it isn't, why don't you try one of these things? Call Jill Wolf.
yeah, there you go.
Call Now, Jill, before we
Yeah.
leave, you're practicing in Chicago.
Yeah.
What part of Chicago?
It's in the northern suburbs, but
Okay.
I see people from all over.
All over the state, right?
Well, the state, and sometimes people drive down from Wisconsin or Michigan. I just had a new couple start with me from Michigan. I didn't know they were from Michigan. They're telling me their address. And I said, "You drove down from Michigan?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Wow, I better be worth it."
If you haven't heard this in this episode, Jill is one of the funniest people. She does our stand up at
Mm,
the Imago North America conferences. And everybody is in stitches, tears coming down our cheeks because you
Yeah.
bring so much joy, Jill.
Well, it's fun for me too.
Yeah. So, what is your website?
My website is quantumlove.com. Yeah.
Quantumlove.com.
Yeah. It's not a
And
great website. I probably should, you know, dress it up a little bit, but
ah,
I'm currently on.
if we know where to find you, that's all that matters because they've
Right.
already heard the talent that they would have in the room where they get to sit with you as a couple and
Yeah.
learn
Thanks.
and grow safely. So, websites are less important than the quality of the therapist. And you certainly are a quality therapist.
Well, as I call you, my favorite Coco. Um, I
It-
really appreciate the opportunity to engage with you on this topic. You know, it's can be like not pretty to have to talk about anger, but I think when you see it as human and it can be like, let me get your attention about something, um, then it doesn't have to be so destructive.
no, and that we can learn how to do it better, not
Yeah.
do it less. Just be able to express it in a healthy way. Did you know that you're my 51st episode?
Ooh,
Yeah.
amazing! Look how many
Yeah.
people you've gotten to talk with you.
I'm learning from every guest that comes on the show. And we're in 700 and over, I think 782 cities and 78 countries, I think. So
Mhm.
we're reaching lots of people. What I need from our listeners is I need you to rate the episode. I need you to download it, subscribe. And if you wanted to contribute, you could contribute to the episode, which will only be able enable me to stay on longer
Mhm.
and touch more lives. So don't forget, as we leave today, thank you, Jill Wolf from Chicago. And we are excited about our next episode on the relationship blueprint, where you unlock your power of connection. And so take this information today about anger and see what you can do in your own life differently. Experiment with it and have fun. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.